you're a dad? You have some
I
kids?
am. I've got one little girl who's 2.5, and then I've got another on the way, due in September.
Oh,
Yeah,
dang, dude. Holy
yeah,
cow.
absolutely. Yeah,
How
can't
you
wait.
feeling? Yeah, how you feeling about number two coming along?
Ecstatic. Yeah,
Yeah.
I want seven of them. So
Do you?
as many kids as we can have. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. We're not stopping. I want to try to have as many little kiddos as we possibly can. So
That's
we're
awesome,
loving it,
man.
man. It's a dream. It's a dream. It's the best thing on the planet.
I agree. I agree with you. I actually feel the same way most days. You know, like if I did, we have two, 14 and almost 12, and then we took a 5 year break, and then now we have a 6 and 4 year old. I wish I didn't take a 5 year break so I could have just like busted out some more babies because I really do love being a dad. The 5 year break is, I don't know if I recommend it. I do feel like I'm a better dad because of that break, and I grew up a little bit. But how old are you? Do you mind me asking? How old are you
No,
with your
I
hair? I feel like
just
you're like
turned
it.
Oh,
I'm like,
I just
dude.
turned 30 a month ago.
Yeah, dude, I was gonna guess, and
Yeah.
yeah. So you're young. You're ready to bust it out. Dude. What made you want to have so many
So
babies? What makes you excited about having lots of babies?
I'd say, first of all, I only had one sibling, and my sister and I are incredibly close.
Hmm.
But I always looked at a few specific friends of mine that had a lot of siblings with a level of envy. Plus, my sister was great. So I was like, gosh, how awesome would it be to have five more great siblings? And we moved a lot growing up as a kid. And
Mm.
so as we ventured from city to city, I grew up spent the majority of my life in Southern California, but I actually lived in, four different states, two countries. As we grew up, yeah, I'd have to make new friends anytime we'd land in a new spot. And so there was always a hunger from an early age for just kind of an instant community. And my family and I grew very, very close. And
Mm.
so obviously anything that is really good in your life, you just want more of it. And I had an
Yeah.
amazing family, and so obviously wanted more of it. And then I'd say, as we've grown up, my wife and I both feel that ultimately our responsibility more than anything else is to create a legacy that outlives us.
Hmm.
And the best way that we feel we can be positive contributors to our community and our country is less about the things we build, and it's more about the legacy that we pass on.
Mm.
And so the more kids we can have in the world that believe the truth and are running in God's purpose for their life, to us, that feels like the greatest level of impact we could ever have. And so my wife and I are both very purpose driven people. It makes sense to try to multiply that purpose as much as possible. And kids are a huge piece of that. The last thing I'll say is just like, I love being a dad. I think it's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
And so the more opportunities I have to be able to interact with God's design in multiple children of mine, like would be a blessing and a dream. One last thing that's kind of funny, at our company, we almost have a little bit of a competition amongst our executive team. Right now, one of our presidents of one of the divisions at our company, he's got seven kids, so he's in the running for the leader.
Dang.
But we're all trying to catch up, so it's a fun little competition as well.
Dang, man. That's super fun. That's awesome. Why did you move so much as a kid?
My father's work moved us around quite a bit as a kid, so
Okay.
a lot of people ask, was he in the military? He was not in the military, but he was actually in finance. And my mother and my father, they have been together since they were 14 years old. They were middle
Mm.
school sweethearts, which is amazing. And actually, today they're more in love than they've ever been. They'd be the first to tell you that, which is pretty
Wow.
special. But they grew up in small farm towns in central Illinois, and
Mm.
they both had multiple siblings. And most of the siblings that my mother and my father had stayed local to central Illinois over the years. My parents, though, wanted a little bit of a different adventure. Neither of them felt super called to the farm lifestyle, so they
Hmm.
ventured out, and they basically never stopped adventuring. So anytime my father would have the opportunity for a new promotion or a new job experience, within his company, he would jump right on it. He felt like something he wanted for us and for our family unit as a whole was adventure. And so we bopped
Wow.
around, had a blast while doing so, learned a lot. At the time, it was a lot harder to move a ton. You're trying to make new friends, as I mentioned, on the fly. You're in new environments constantly. Now that I look back, though, 15, 20 years later, it is one of the things I'm most grateful for about my childhood. It
Mm,
taught me so much about how to put yourself out there, get out of your comfort zone, meet new people, um, not be afraid of rejection or coming across as misunderstood. Like you kind of had no other option than just put yourself out there.
mm,
And that was really awesome. It also taught me a ton about how to interact with adults because my parents were really, really good at trying to involve us in their life. So the whole like concept of work-life balance where my dad basically would go to work and then check out and not talk about it for the rest of the evening, that didn't really happen. My parents sort of took an alternative approach where they tried to involve us a lot more in my father's career. And
mm.
so our conversations as a kid, it was really cool. My parents, they would always express the why behind things we were doing as a family very clearly. So anytime we would move, they would say to us, even when I was like 10 years old, they would say, this is why we're making this move. This is the heart behind it. Are you okay with this? I mean, it was really neat the way we were kind of involved in the process.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it was a fascinating childhood. There are times when I hunger for more like roots. But at the end of the day, I've discovered that roots have a lot more to do with people than they do necessarily geographical location. And I've met some phenomenal people, even since my childhood, that are still close friends today, even though at times of our relationship, we live thousands of miles apart. So
Wow.
it's been a wild ride, man.
That is a wild ride. I bet you a lot of people who are listening are probably they're gonna chew on that because I know a lot of families are thinking about moving and where's the best place to raise our family, and you often think about grandparents' help and how much help you can find, and what there's just so much. There's so many moving pieces to thinking about where you want to raise your family and where you want to live, and I do think one of the fears is, I certainly have felt this, if we move a lot around a lot, how much is this going to impact our kids and their stability? And so I've gone back and forth on that. It's interesting to hear you say that. I don't have any I haven't landed on any conclusions on that necessarily, but I moved a lot with my son. He's 14 now, but when he was young, I think he lived in like 5 houses in 6 years or something like that. And so I was kind of bummed about that. And I've said now where we live, and we live in a great neighborhood, but I'm like, I kind of want to live here until at least all my kids graduate, just to give them some stability with friends. But that's interesting what you say. I wonder if the stability is more about the people and less about the location. I'll have to chew on that for a little bit, but something for other listeners to chew on as they're thinking through, their own family journey and where to raise their kids. But it sounds like you had a really like super intentional parents and a dad. Were they're believers?
They are today. My mom would tell you that she's always believed in Christ.
Okay.
She's always seeing Jesus Christ as her Lord and Savior. My dad would tell you that he had a um, more of a challenge with faith, especially in kind of the early part of my childhood. My father and I actually both accepted Christ within the same 12 months formally.
What? Wow.
Yeah, it
Tell
was
us the story.
wild. So
Tell us the story, dude.
there's an amazing organization called JH Ranch, and JH Ranch is in Northern California. It specializes in parent-teen relationships. So
Mm,
what'll happen is a dad will take his son, or a dad will take his daughter, or a mom will take a son, and a mom will take the daughter. And they'll go out to Northern California for a week, and it's dedicated, consecrated time together with other
mm.
parents and their teenagers from all over the world. There's been like 81 countries
Wow.
that have been represented through JH Ranch. There are thousands of people that go through this property every summer, and the focus is on whether your relationship is strong with your parents or your relationship is more strained and tiring. They want to essentially give you a week of dedicated time to improve your relationship, grow closer together, recognize the season of life that you're in, and learn how to grow together in that season, as well as
Mm,
preparing for all the different seasons to come. So the the program basically revolves around this journey that you go on with your parents and how they influence your life. So it talks about how in the early days of your childhood, your father or your mother, they're really caretakers for you. So think, birth through 4 years old ish. Your parents are really caretakers primarily. You can't live without them. You can't eat without them. They're really there to make sure that you're staying alive.
mm,
Then you move from caretaker as a parent to a cop. You're learning as a kid, right from wrong, how to do things, why to do them, why not to do them. You get punished when you do them wrong. It's all about teaching morality in the cop phase. And there's a heavy level of control to make sure that you're doing the right thing. So when you're 8 years old, you don't have a ton of autonomy yet. You can't drive. You can't make a whole lot of decisions for yourself. Your parent is really there to be a bit of a police over the life for your betterment and for your good. Then when
Hmm.
you hit 12, 13 years old, your parents really turn into a coach. And so the focus becomes far more on inspiring you to the right actions, taking the early learnings of basic morality and converting it into positive action that resembles righteousness for the betterment of your own journey as a kid. And as a coach would in sports, for example, let's say you play football, like the coach can tell you what to do, how to do it, the right way to do it, the wrong way to do it. The coach can even impose punishment if you do it wrong. You can run sprints if you decide to do it wrong. But at the end of the day, you as a teenager or you as a football player, you got to jump on the field. It's you
Hmm.
actually performing the action.
Hmm.
And so the concept is in that high school season of life, the kids have a lot more autonomy all of a sudden to really begin to make decisions, still under the roof of their parents, but with a lot more individuality and autonomy. Then
Wow.
what happens is once for this final stage, once a teenager, let's say, graduates into adulthood, your parents become more of a consultant.
Hmm.
And practically what that looks like is a consultant is really there for your guidance, but they don't have a whole lot of inspiration or input into, or certainly not control into how you actually operate. So
Hmm.
practically, I'm 30 years old. My father has a lot of wisdom to impose. He has a lot of benefit to be able to provide me in terms of life experience and what I should do and certain moral lessons, even still today. Um, but at the end of the day, I would never have to answer the phone if I didn't want to. I'm living
Hmm.
my own life. I have my own family. Now, thankfully, I have a beautiful relationship with my dad. So we do love to talk very frequently, and I love to get his advice. But he's in this consultant stage of life now for me, rather than a cop or a coach or a caretaker. And it's
Hmm.
really on me to initiate more of the relationship. So to wrap it all up, JH Ranch was this incredible program where my father and I went when I was 14 years old. We were in this cop to coach transition stage, and I was really not handling that transition stage well. I was pretty rebellious. And my father would tell you that he was slow to give up the cop role and move into more of a coach.
Hmm.
And both of us were striving in our secular minds, trying to do what we thought was best in our own mind. And that week, we were introduced to the gospel in a very tangible, practical way. And my father actually was first. He accepted Christ in a real, tangible way. He turned kind of the questioning of his faith and the back and forth battle with is God real? What's his role in all of this, etc. Turned that into a very intentional dedication to the Lord. And then a year later, I also did the same thing, gave my life over to Christ.
Wow.
And I took a little bit more tugging. The Lord was patient with me. But my dad really started a journey of transition for our entire family to becoming very dedicated to the gospel and Jesus Christ's influence in our entire life. And nothing about our family was ever the same. It really showed me that a father's role in the household to be the spiritual leader cannot be overstated. We saw it practically in our family. And now, today, our entire family are dedicated believers. The gospel informs everything we do. We try to live lives of holy devotion to the Lord. And much of it started with a intentional focus on my dad and I's relationships, and especially trying to mitigate some of the problems we were experiencing.
Wow. Dude, that's one of the coolest stories I've heard in a long time. That is really,
That's
really
awesome.
cool. Yeah, that is really, really cool. I'm going to immediately check out that ranch and probably sign my son and I up for it for our own.
You should go. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
dude. Where in California is it?
About an hour south of the Oregon border. So it's way
Oh,
Northern
yeah,
California.
way north. Okay. I grew up
Yeah,
in
it's
south of Sacramento. Um, wow. That's a beautiful area. That's a nice area. Redwoods, kind of the Redwoods
oh
area.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Dude, that is a really encouraging story, man. Really, really encouraging. How long is the camp? Is it like a summer thing or a week long or how long is it?
It's a week long.
Okay.
So generally they start on Saturdays. So a parent and a teenager will show up on Saturdays and they'll generally leave that next Saturday morning. So it's
Okay.
6 full days and it's an incredible program. I've been with both my father and my mother. So I went back and did mother son.
Wow.
My whole family ended up working at this organization, which was pretty awesome. Years later, I met my wife through this organization. which
Oh,
was
dude.
also awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's a
It's
phenomenal
changed your life
life-changing
in every
program.
yeah, it's changed your life in every
Every
possible
way.
way. Yeah. Hit you from
Exactly
every
right.
angle. Holy cow. And like the stages of parenting, how much of the program is them teaching you as the kid and or teaching the parent? Like, how does the parent know that they're in those roles? Because even as you were describing them, like that makes sense, but a lot of parents aren't thinking through that intentionally. Like, okay, now I'm moving from the cop phase to the coaching phase. Are they teaching both the parent and the child those phases?
They are. I'd say if I had to break down on a percentage basis the focus of the week, I'd say, 30% of the time is very intentional with the actual teenagers that are in the program. Very focused on their role to play in the relationship because it does take two to tango. A parent can be doing everything to the best of their abilities and can be as near perfect as you can be, and yet it still takes the teenager to be able to respond in humility to the intentional actions of the parents. I'd say another 30%, it's about 30, 30, 30. 30% on the teams, 30% intentional focus to the parents, and then 30% is how you actually operate together.
Hmm.
What I will tell you is that in most cases, the parents take their teenager out to JH Ranch thinking, my son's given me some challenge. I just want him to be closer to me. I don't understand why he doesn't respond to my love and affection and what's going on here. Why is there rebellion, etc. What they'll leave saying is that I thought I was here to work on my son, and God showed me this week he was here to work on me.
Wow.
That's the most, I'd say that's the most common sentiment we hear from parents that leave the ranch. They say that at the end of the day, uh, it was the best 6 days they've ever experienced for their own spiritual journey and how that can influence them as a father or a mother. And that makes all the difference. And it was practical for me too. Like I had a lot of issues as a kid. I was rebellious. I had a general chip on my shoulder growing up, and there are a lot of reasons for that. Most of which were just self-inflicted. But at the end of the day, I had to see my dad go first. I had to see him lead, and I had to actually watch that permeate every part of himself for a period of time before I really responded to it. And once I saw my dad really take his faith super seriously, it became both inspiring and convicting.
Hmm.
My dad would tell you that growing up, he had a really tough childhood. My dad went through it, and he's sort of a miracle child that he turned out as strong as he is today because he went through the ringer. But my dad would tell you that for much of his life, he was guided by a desire for security or monetary comfort or ensuring that we wouldn't have to live the same childhood he lived. He grew up in a trailer park and had a lot of issues in the family, and he wanted to make sure that the financial security he gained would be able to positively influence us. But there were a lot of these good things, but not necessarily God, that drove a lot of his decision making. And he held on very, very tightly to everything in his life. And that ended up hitting me and my sister pretty hard because we would feel that desire for control of every circumstance, and it would manifest in very high expectations for me, especially. Um, I remember one day we were at JH Ranch actually, and my dad said, "Michael, do you know why I place such high expectations on you?" And we were having kind of a heart to heart, and I said, "Dad, I've always kind of wondered that. Like it feels a lot." And I've never been able to get to the roots of why. And he said, because I place even higher expectations on myself. He said, every day I wake up feeling like I just need to be better. And when I do that, I end up placing that on everyone around me too. And he actually apologized for that. When I
Wow.
began to see that humility out of my dad that was really spawned through J.H. Ranch originally, like it completely changed my worldview. I grew up believing my dad was God. I thought my dad could do no wrong. I thought that he had control over everything. I thought that, he didn't struggle, and therefore I would look at myself and ask, why am I struggling? Like, why can't I be perfect? And then it was this amazing awakening where I realized through his humility, he's a dude. He's a regular man. And my dad's amazing, but he's got his struggles. And when I started to understand those and understand how much he was placing expectations on his own shoulders, and therefore I was a downstream effect of that. Like my love and admiration and respect for my father as a man grew immensely. And so I'd say that's a pretty common case study of what you see through a program like JH Ranch, the humility that's unlocked in the heart of a father or a mother to be really open and vulnerable with their kids ends up changing the kids more than anything.
I think that you know, every dad listening needs to just sit on that for a second, like pause and chew on that for their own story. Like how much of your own expectations on yourself, the fact that what you just said, that maybe in his striving, you hadn't seen his humility on full display at least. And it was his humility and his brokenness and his, that posture of going low and saying, I need Jesus is what really drew your heart. And I just think as dads, we got to chew on that, like honestly, and be self-aware enough to say, all right, what expectations am I putting on my kid as a result of my own stuff, you know, that I'm dealing with as a dad? I think that that's convicting for all of us as dads. What do you think if you could rewind to 14-year-old you at the ranch that day, you know, prior, what, if your dad's putting a bunch of expectations on you and feeling like you always have to strive to be excellent, what would 14-year-old you say you actually needed? Not, you know, not this level of excellence or this expectation. What did you feel like you actually needed from your dad pre JH Ranch?
I would tell you the biggest thing, and I've told him this as well, that I needed at that age was an acknowledgement from him, a real acknowledgement that as hard as he was pressuring me and as much as he wanted a good life for me, I wanted it for myself even more. I
Mm,
think that some things that a lot of dads sometimes forget is that for many teenagers, certainly not everybody, but I'd say the vast majority of teenagers, especially if you're raised in sort of a Christian home or a home that believes in objective morality, but sort of trying to figure out the spiritual side of things, uh, a lot of dads will struggle to remember that the pressure they're placing on their kids is already on top of a whole lot of pressure that they're placing on themselves.
mm,
I was already placing an immense amount of pressure on myself. From an early age, I've wanted to ensure I was living a life I could be proud of. I was wanting to learn. I was wanting to explore. I was wanting to try to seek the truth in things. I was trying to figure out this wild life that we're all living. And in my striving to figure that out, the thing that always hurt the most was then coming over the top from my father with even more pressure. It's sort of like when you screw up, uh, let's say there's somebody in your life, whether it's your son or a friend or a coworker or your spouse, you know, when they screw up, if they have any level of humility, they feel the impact of their screw up and it hurts them. So sometimes the worst thing that I could do is to throw fuel on the fire and make them feel even worse about the issue that they just tripped up into, um, especially if it's a stupid one. And I made a lot of stupid decisions when I was 14. And so I think one thing that I would have loved for my father back then is his acknowledgement that, like, Dad, I'm trying. I'm trying to figure this out. It's not that I don't care. I really do care about the life I'm living. I really do want purpose. I want to figure out why the heck I'm here. But I'm 14 and I don't have that figured out yet. So if I can breathe a little to figure it out with your help, I'll actually come to you more often. I'll ask you more questions. I got to be able to learn and I got to be able to experiment here by asking questions. And I think that ultimately that's something 14-year-old Michael would have loved. The other thing I'll mention is that um, I would have loved at an early age to understand from my dad uh, the why behind a lot of decisions he made,
mm,
and both positive and negative, and what he learned from it. I think that my father often wanted to shield me from a lot of the negativity in his own life or mistakes he had made, mostly to ensure that the house was peaceful. But what I would have actually loved at 14 is to hear from my dad some of the vulnerability he ended up opening when we went through J Ranch. I would have loved to hear that he does not have it figured out. I would have loved to hear him say things like he ended up telling me that, you know, he has been striving his whole life and never felt like he's good enough. I would have loved to hear from him about his concerns with whether or not he was on the right career path and whether or not he was being a good husband. And that level of openness and honesty, it wouldn't have created a lack of peace in the household. If anything, it would have actually made me feel like I'm living with another human. And that would give me a great grace that even though my father hasn't gone through many of the issues I've gone through, I can still open up to him because he has issues. That was the big problem in our relationship, is we were just shut down. We weren't talking, we weren't communicating. I wasn't being honest and open. And my dad was trying to create kind of a perfect picture of the American family. And I think when we went to JH and those walls came down, it opened up a level of honesty on both sides, but especially me. I felt like I could really get a lot more intentional with my dad than ever before, because I saw him go first. And I also saw him acknowledge in me, for the first time in my life, my son actually cares about his life. He actually cares about choosing the right path. It's just he's 14. And how can I help him make that journey as a coach rather than act like a cop and constantly expect a level of progress or perfection? When sometimes the journey to growth is not so, up and to the right. Um, I think that was a big learning experience for both of us.
Man, it's impossible for me to hear your story without just reflecting on my own journey as a dad right now. And it's convicting. It's encouraging. So thank you for being vulnerable and sharing, kind of peeling back the curtain for you from your childhood there. I think that's going to be a lot for guys to chew on. So I really appreciate that, man. You said that you were, rebellious at 14, and then you said for a lot of reasons. Um, do you mind sharing some of those reasons? Like, what do you think was causing your rebellion at 14?
I think in many ways it was a hunger for life purpose. There was actually a US News survey conducted in the early thousands that asked parents, "What's your number one fear?" And then it asked teenagers, "What's your number one fear?" in the United States. And parents said, "My number one fear is not being able to pass on my value system to my children, that I will not communicate my values appropriately to my children, that I'll basically never help them discover the why behind all of this." And the number one fear amongst teenagers was never discovering their life purpose. So it
Mm.
actually went very hand in hand. Bigger than spiders, bigger than rejection, bigger than snakes, bigger than any of that. The greatest fear amongst teenagers is we would never discover why the heck we're here. And for me, a lot of my rebellion was spawned out of an exploratory journey to try to figure out why the heck we're here. I've never been content with I don't know. I've never been content with a lack of clarity or answers. I've always been a pretty driven individual, and that started to manifest itself in an early age. And unfortunately, there's no playbook or no manual for life. Now, thankfully, we have the Bible, which I learned when I turned 15 and understood that that actually is the book of life, and it holds the keys to life and life everlasting. But in my early years, I would rebel largely out of a sense of feeling like um, I didn't have clear answers as to why the heck I'm here. And I would search for purpose in a lot of destructive areas. That's number one. Number two is I had a general, in that hunger for purpose, I had a general uh, distrust with just status quo. And so when I would hear things like, you can't do this because reasons, but without really clearly articulating what those reasons are, it would make me want to do those things more. And that was a problem for me. And it's actually informed a lot of um, how my father ended up sort of adjusting some of his parenting as I grew older and as he grew older, which I'll come back to in a second. But then I think the third thing is we just had a lot of pressure in our household. I knew that I needed to perform at a very high level. I felt from an early age that life is a gift and I don't want to waste it. And I was told that very often by my parents. And we grew up in sort of a high pressure environment, and every day felt really important. And like if I miss this day, then I've missed out on my life purpose. If I've missed an opportunity to excel or get good grades or compete in athletics, like I'm inherently a failure. And so every day I had this sort of intense pressure, both from myself as well as from, my family, to go and perform. And ultimately, when I was 12, 13, 14, that really started to wear on me. And that pressure began to almost push me away from performing. Final thing I'll say that sort of ties this together is that um, as a child, I, by the grace of God, was able to excel early in things like athletics or academics. And because of that, I was generally placed in environments with older kids that were a few years ahead of me. And so I'll paint this picture practically for you. When I was 13, I was a nationally ranked swimmer. I was swimming against 18-year-olds, and I would be in the locker room with these 18-year-olds, and their conversation would wear off on me. And their conversation, I'll just say, was not exactly divinely inspired.
Totally.
And and so you pair all this together. I had a ton of pressure on my shoulders from all sides, especially myself. I had a general distrust of institutions because I could feel like I never got a clear answer on why the heck decisions were made the way they were made. I was hungering for purpose and direction in my own life and not feeling like I could unlock easy answers to those questions. And I was being influenced by a group of older folks that did not have their own life purpose in check and were choosing a lot of vanity things to try to fill those gaps in their soul. You put all that together and it was a perfect storm.
Yeah.
And it created an environment of rebellion that again was all self-inflicted. Like at the end of the day, I had a choice to pursue what I pursued, and I chose the wrong thing for many years of my childhood. Thankfully, by God's grace, that wasn't the end of the story. But it was a perfect storm in every sense of the phrase.
Yeah. Do you mind if I ask you kind of a vulnerable question?
Please.
Something I'm sure you do lots of interviews, but I don't know if you've tackled this with a mic in front of your face. So I appreciate your vulnerability, but I'm just looking at you, man. I'm hearing your story. You just turned 30. You're successful. Like you got some great businesses going, which I want to talk about because they really are great and I want to tackle them. But the reason I'm getting to this is because you use the phrase somewhere in your story about like if I didn't succeed or if I didn't excel at a high level, then you use the words I would be a failure. Is there any part of you that feels like you still have to, as a 30-year-old, succeed and do big things, or else you're a failure?
Oh yeah. Yes. I would love to tell you that I would love to tell you that I have confronted a lot of the inner negative aspects of self pressure and self inflicted sort of detrimental language to myself in my own life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That is a journey I am very much still on.
Mm-hmm.
Now I will tell you, I've learned how to keep it in check and not allow for it to turn into negative action. So it's mostly a mental battle and it's mostly a soul battle. Back when I was 14, not only was it a mental and a soul battle, but it also then would manifest in actions. And so it was a sort of uh, well-rounded battle on all fronts. But now today when I'm 30, it's largely an internal challenge I still face. I wake up every morning feeling like I need to do more in order to achieve my own life purpose. I wake up every day with this battle on this fine line between healthy drive and also like undue, detrimental, debilitating pressure I place on my own shoulders. In many ways, um, I also operate in an environment that sort of rewards that uh, testing the boundaries. And so that's been a challenge too. I operate in an environment that rewards sort of uh, deeply neurotic self pressure behavior. And so learning how to be influenced by the reward system of heaven that looks a whole lot more like intentional relationship with God than necessarily what you accomplish. That has been really, really difficult for me. There's an old quote, and I can't remember who said it, but it basically, I'm paraphrasing a bit, but it says that I wake up every day torn between two opposing desires. One is to change the world, and one is to enjoy it. And the heart of that phrase, when it says enjoy the world, isn't talking about the vices of the world. It's talking about the sunshine and my family and taking a walk and breathing and sitting around a fire and dinner time. And changing the world looks like building, growing, innovating, pressing forward, right? I wake up every day torn between those two desires. And that is a challenge in my own soul that has not been resolved. And the last thing I'll say there is that I'm really grateful for a network of mentors that have been dealing with this for decades as well in their own life. Um, because what I find is that uh, it's helpful for me to hear from people who have also faced that same challenge. Um, because I see this topic as sort of a balance of extremes. You have people that are extremely self-pressuring to the point where it starts to manifest itself in negative actions that destroy their lives and their peace. And then you also have the polar opposite swing, which is like nothing of what we actually do matters. It's all about just enjoying time with friends and family and fellowship. And who needs to have a builder mentality or innovative? And I've found that neither of those extremes are healthy. And there is a level every day of trying to figure out where the right balance is. Um, but in terms of pressuring myself, there's one resounding truth that has stuck with me from actually J.H. Ranch that helps keep me in check today. And it is the following: if I live for the praises of men, I will die by their criticisms. If I live for anything else other than an audience of one, I am absolutely toast. And so the nice thing that is being worked on more and more in my heart today is a daily reminder that at the end of the day, I'm living for one person and one person alone, and it's Jesus Christ. And as long as he's happy with me, and I'm still struggling with that too. But as long as he's happy with me and that his favor is upon me and that he's not leaving me, like that's been something that I have to daily remind myself of to keep my own inner world in check.
Dude, thank you for sharing honestly and vulnerably. I know that's, again, probably not all the questions you're getting in your normal interviews, but it takes guts. It takes guts to be vulnerable, and I'm grateful for you to be honest with us and share that. There was this. Well, first of all, one of the things that you were saying that made me think of this. I have a friend. He sometimes hosts episodes on this podcast. His name's Chris Hilkin, and he says that there's like for all these spiritual disciplines that God gives us, they're often a result of, or their motivation behind, the heart behind these spiritual disciplines is to go against all the things that our flesh so adamantly desires. And I'm not saying this as well as he articulates it, but essentially, like, if you're hungry for money, then there's tithing, right? It's like, this is the whole reason for tithing, is because we're really just, it goes against our greed. It's a sacrifice so that greed doesn't take over. And so one of the things I was thinking of is Sabbath for you. And for anyone who deals with, like, God, I want to use my purposes and my giftings to all the full extent of what you've given me, all these giftings, I really want to live them out for your glory. And also, I'm probably working too much and I'm striving too much and I'm finding my worth in my identity and what I can accomplish. And then God says, okay, then rest. Like, I'm forcing you to rest to show that it's not your hard work that's going to provide. It's not your hard work that's going to give you your identity. Your identity is going to be in me and me alone. So just sit for a minute, sit for a day, and just having the idea of, like, daily rest, weekly rest, yearly rest, like, where you're really taking, and it's not just so that you can be lazy. It's so that you're reminding your soul, there's something in me that craves to find value and identity and worth in my work. And I'm going to force myself to stop and say, my work, my value, my identity does not come in what I can accomplish. I could accomplish a lot today, but instead of accomplishing stuff, I'm just going to sit down and I'm going to remind myself on purpose, my identity comes in Christ and Christ alone. So I was thinking about that. Have you ever heard of IFS, internal family systems? Have you ever heard that? Okay, so I did this, like, deep intensive counseling this last year, and they have this idea of internal family systems. It's essentially the idea behind the movie Inside Out. Have you ever seen Inside Out?
I haven't seen it, but I'm familiar.
When your kids get a little older, they'll probably like it. So the premise behind Inside Out is it's one girl, and the whole movie is all the voices inside her head. So you have anger inside of her head, you have sadness inside of her head, and there's lots of parts of her. We're not just one person. We're one person with lots of parts of us. And each person the movie is one of the characters is taking control of the control center of her brain. So anger will, like, shove everyone aside and, like, get on the control board and just completely take over, or sadness will completely take over. And what I was thinking of is, you as a child, you have this 14-year-old boy in you, and probably younger, that really the programming was wired to, the programming was set to, I have to accomplish and be really productive and successful in order to find value. Or you learned as a kid, when I am successful, when I do win the races, when I do get the high accomplishments at school or whatever, people seem to really receive me well. And it doesn't take a genius to learn for a child. if I'm successful, I get good attention. And if I'm not successful, I get bad attention. And so a kid wants to learn to be successful. And so essentially as an adult, that part of you, that 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 14-year-old is still trying, that's still on the bus. It's still trying to get the control center of your brain. And so now as you wake up as a 30-year-old, that dude, 12-year-old you, wants to jump on the control center and say, okay, let's be massively successful today, because when we are, good things happen. People really seem to pat me on the back. I'm really rewarded here. And the goal of IFS, they would say in therapy, is not to kick that part of you off the bus, but just not let them drive all the time. And this is really putting that balance to what you were just talking about. It's like, yes, I'm going to be successful and try hard and do my best with the gifts God's given me, but 12-year-old me isn't going to drive the bus of my life with the motivation, I have to do this, and if I don't do this, I have no value. Does that make sense?
It does.
That
Yeah,
was like,
I would tell you.
yeah, go. Yeah, please share your thoughts.
Well, I was just going to say in response, I'd say um, I've found something really interesting that people always used to tell me, especially when starting my own businesses. I had a number of mentors that would say things like rest will actually not only help you and it'll recharge you and connect you to what's most important and all of that, it'll actually help your business a lot more than you just trying to strive and figure it all out yourself without any rest breaks. And there was sort of a, okay, I hear you. Yeah mentality when I would originally hear that for the first few years. Finally, end of last year came around, end of 2024, and I was burning it at both ends. I love work too. Like, it's not something I like struggle through. I love building. I'm addicted to it. But obviously your greatest strengths can become your greatest weaknesses if they're overemphasized. And it was a strive into the latter half of last year. My good friend said, hey, I've got a surf property down in Nicaragua. I love to surf. And he said, I've got a surf property down in Nicaragua. It's right on the beach. Why don't you come down for 72 hours and just unplug, surf for 3 days, surf your brain out, recharge, and then you can hit it back and start the new year strong. And I talked to my wife about it and aligned that that's a great call. That's exactly what I should do. So I went down there, flew there for 72 hours, and I surfed. The amount of business clarity that was unlocked while I was away from my phone, surfing repeatedly, having fun with a friend, and just breathing for 3 days was more than any strategy session at a whiteboard that I could have done in 10 lifetimes. And so to your point, like, I think that ultimately, the biggest journey for me throughout my 20s was learning actually how to channel healthy things properly. It was less about like, I have this destructive vice in my life and I need to get rid of it because it's blocking me from the Lord. Of course, I have plenty of sin in my life that I'm daily trying to chip away at. But most of my issues actually didn't come from some destructive vice. Most of my issues in my 20s were because I overemphasized actually good things. And those overemphasized things, I was basically letting these certain drives within me, to paint your analogy, practically, like I was letting these certain drives within me kind of drive the bus rather than channeling them in a healthy direction. And it's funny because one of the mentors that used to tell me, hey, if you just take 72 hours and chill out for a bit, like the amount of wisdom and clarity it'll unlock for your business will blow you away. He was my first call when I got back from Nicaragua. And I was like, you weren't kidding. Like, I've got these mental blueprints. I can see it clearly now. I see all these pieces come together. And it's like God was sort of laughing in a loving way. Like, I've been trying to tell you. And finally you did this, and you should do it more often. Right. Yeah. And so, yeah, that's been the hardest journey for me to learn, but it's definitely one that I'm grateful for folks that are living it out, and grateful for the wisdom of people like you who are actually using platforms to speak these truths, because it helps people like me a lot. And, you know, again, when I live in an ecosystem that I live in where we're all kind of struggling with this, like it's very helpful to have voices of wisdom chime in and help us kind of snap out of it a bit. And I'm really grateful for that. It actually does more for me, not just in personal life and health, but even in business than I ever would have thought possible.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about platforms, specifically the platforms that you've created. But first, before we'll end on a high note, I want to hit your business stuff, so that, you know, the thing with these interviews is like people could just Google your name and they'll immediately find all the cool stuff you're doing. So I want to always try to like get to the heart of who you are. and not just the business stuff. But I do want to talk about it at the end. But you mentioned criticism, doing stuff for an audience of one. Like I'm gonna just strive. Like, what does God think of me more than what anyone else thinks of me? But I imagine with the businesses you've created, you've had to have some criticism. So like you're fleshing that out in a pretty public way, I would imagine. I don't know that. I haven't read any news articles. I don't know any hidden stuff, but I imagine with the businesses that you have created, you're making some pretty big public stances. And whenever you do that, there's always somebody who's going to be like, I don't like this guy. Let me push back. And so I guess two things here. One, tell us about the businesses you're doing and the stances you're trying to make. And then two, how are you personally dealing with the criticism that has to be coming your way as a result?
Me too. So first of all, you nailed it. There's been a very heavy load of criticism since starting these businesses. And before actually starting the business, I had a podcast that did fairly well where I spoke about politics and culture and how those two topics were influenced by our Christian faith, or should be influenced by our Christian faith, at least. And that came with a lot of criticism as well. That was sort of the warm up for what I'm doing now. But to address it specifically, so we started a business called PublicSquare. PublicSquare is a marketplace and payments ecosystem that has three different divisions within the company. We have a marketplace called PublicSquare.com that focuses on promoting made in America goods for your traditional American family. So if you're a family that loves life, family values, and liberty, you can shop from thousands of small businesses that make their products right here in the United States, get to know the makers of those products, connect with how your goods are being sourced. And it's an awesome marketplace experience at PublicSquare.com. We have a fintech division where we actually process payments. We are actually the largest fintech provider for the gun industry, for example. So talk about controversy and criticisms. We're big believers in the Second Amendment.
Yeah,
And
same. Real quick though, sorry to interrupt you. What's fintech?
Financial technology.
Oh,
sorry.
No, that's okay. Sometimes when you're in that world, you just say
Yeah.
things. Yeah, I have a buddy that's in the military, and he just uses all these acronyms. I'm like, bro, I don't know a thing you just said. So sorry to interrupt you, but I wanted to. Yeah, fintech. Okay, financial technology.
That's right. So we handle payment processing, and we're actually the largest financial technology provider for the gun industry. So we do a lot in that space. It's a space we love very dearly. And then we have a brands division. So in our brands division, we actually started a company called EveryLife. And EveryLife is the fastest growing baby brand in the United States.
Wow.
We're actually the only pro-life, pro-family diaper company in the world today. Believe it or not, every other major diaper company, either vocally or financially, supports abortion. And so we brought this brand to market to celebrate life, every miracle of life. And we partner with churches and pregnancy centers and pro-life nonprofit organizations. And we have a give back program called Buy for a Cause that's phenomenal. And we provide diapers, wipes, soaps, lotions, and these different goods to parents that are wanting to raise their kids up in the truth. And they're premium ingredients, clean, quality goods that help make sure that you're protecting every little miracle. So we have the family marketplace that focuses on made in America goods. We have the financial technology division that focuses on securing economic liberty. And then we have the brands division that champions life in all stages. And to the second part of your question, as you might imagine, hearing sort of the ethos behind our business, because we are building commerce for what we call a better America. And that's our mission statement. We want to build commerce solutions for a better America. And we do so through those three divisions. And what does a better America look like in our mind? It's an America where strong families build a strong nation, and where we are a culture that celebrates life, family, and liberty. And so our financial ecosystem actually addresses and serves an audience that has been largely abandoned or forgotten by mainstream corporate America over the past few decades. Most of corporate America now focuses on more progressive social ideology. They market themselves really to the coast, to the Bay Area and Brooklyn. That's kind of what guides their marketing and their brand exposure. They're giving to organizations that are really antithetical to a Christian ethic. And we wanted to actually build a financial ecosystem that would celebrate the values that we believe are imperative in order to secure a nation that loves the Lord.
Mm.
And so while some people are fighting the political battle and other people are fighting the cultural battle, we're really fighting the economic battle to ensure that millions of consumers have brands they can feel proud to support as they're shopping from them, that don't cause them to compromise their values in their economic exchange. With that has come a lot of criticism. From the early days of this company, we have had a great deal of exposure. So if you look at our marketplace, for example, we had 1 million consumer accounts on our marketplace within 11 months. So it grew very rapidly. We've had incredible leaders in economics and politics and culture serve on our board or operate as investors. And a lot of those folks have very public personas where they get a lot of criticism. I myself, through my own social channels, get a lot of criticism, and I have a bit of a following where I share a lot about the principles and the values that guide our company. And anytime you're standing for truth, you can expect opposition. And anytime you're trying earnestly with your best efforts and humility to fight for what you believe is right, you're going to face a great deal of opposition. I think it makes it fun. It makes it worthwhile. It helps me know I'm over the target. But man, the things that have been said about us would blow your mind. You know, we've had everyone from the New York Times and Politico and Time Magazine and the New York Post. Everybody's written about us, many cases, multiple times throughout this journey. You know, in the COVID era, we were called a threat to public health because we showcased businesses that weren't going to ask you about your vaccine status or anything like that. We've had a real focus on promoting economic nationalism so that the businesses that represent Main Street America can be supported, which inherently means that sometimes you're going to have the larger corporate incumbents like an Amazon or a Walmart not such big fans of ours, and they have powerful friends in the media, and what happens happens. You know, I'd say that the biggest thing though that's helped us cut through the noise is remembering two things. As I mentioned earlier, we have an audience of one. That goes for me personally, it goes for my family, and it goes for our business. We are serving one master, and it is our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And as long as he is guiding our business and we're submitting to his will, come what may, bring on the criticisms, we're going to keep pressing forward. And the second thing I'd say is that the thing that's helped us cut through the criticism is recognizing that it's actually a joy and a gift to be persecuted or to have said things said about you, either out of malice or misunderstanding, if you are pursuing what God has determined right. And so I think for us, that's really kept us on the straight and narrow and developed real thick skin for us, is recognizing that, as the old adage goes, sticks and stones can break your bones, but words can never hurt you. That's true personally, and it's true corporately. Like, the more that we pursue the mission for our business and the more that we pursue excellence in that mission, as the criticisms have come, an interesting thing happens. Our business actually grows. So I remember the first time the New York Times wrote about us. It was one of the best days for our business. I remember the first time the San Diego Union Tribune wrote a big piece about us on the front page of their site and called us a threat to public health. It grew our business. I remember the first time that Politico wrote a piece criticizing our pro-life values. It grew our business. You know, so I think that if you embrace the criticism and then turn it into a positive thing and a reminder of why you're doing what you're doing, it can actually be a very powerful catalyst for growth in the business. And I want to say one thing in closing on this topic. Being criticized because you're going the right direction, as defined by the Lord, is something to celebrate. Being criticized because we're doing something wrong in the eyes of the Lord, you know, that's self-inflicted opposition, and that's not great. And so I think the big thing that we celebrate within the company is when we're criticized or persecuted because we're earnestly, in humility, trying to pursue the truth and the truth's influence on our business in a positive direction, let's hang those news clippings on the wall and celebrate it.
Yeah.
If we are dropping the ball or we are operating in an unethical way and we get bad press because of it, because there's a big spotlight on our company and our efforts, like, that's not good. That's nothing to celebrate. But thankfully, the criticism has been overwhelmingly because of our values, positioning, and principles. And those things aren't always popular.
Well, dude, I just want to say, too, these are the coolest companies. You've done a great job. I purposely held off on telling you that because I wanted to get through all the soul stuff, make sure we've wrestled through like our motivation behind the cool companies, but they are really cool companies, man. It's I'm a personal consumer of these companies and product, personal user. I love PublicSquare. I think it's so cool. Really, really big fan. So I love what you're doing. The diaper company, the baby products company, I love that you guys are growing like crazy. I just think that's so cool. I'm going to tell this is a free ad. Like every one of our listeners needs to go buy something from your website and support what you're doing there. I absolutely love it. Before I let you go, and I'm sorry if I'm completely pulling this out of left field and it's not true. Did you speak at the largest church in the world? Am I making that up or is that true?
You're not making it up.
Okay,
I did. Yes,
I'm like,
sir. Yeah, you got it.
as I was saying that, I'm like, did I dream this or did you actually, is this real? So, okay, and it was recently, right? Father's Day or something?
It was.
Okay,
Yep.
so it was real. Where is it? What did you, like, tell us about the largest church in the world? South Korea?
You're right. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah, the largest church in the world is called Yoido Full Gospel, and it's in Seoul, South Korea. And you might hear about our business and think, well, that's kind of random. Why were you in South Korea? The backstory of this was completely divinely led and God's hands all over it. It's a pretty wild story. The whole story is a lot longer than we have time for, so I'll condense it. By God's grace, doors opened for us to actually launch our EveryLife brand. So the pro-life, pro-family, premium diapers and wipes. We launched that baby care brand in South Korea because of a wild chain of events that involved the Samsung family and Elon Musk tweeting about us and church partners that were from Atlanta that ended up introducing us to churches in Korea. The whole story is wild. But the bottom line is about a year ago, we set out to actually launch EveryLife in Korea. And 2.5 weeks ago now, on Father's Day, one of our launch partners was actually the largest church in the world. So Yoido Full Gospel, what they did is they actually purchased diapers in bulk from EveryLife and gave them out to new parents in their congregation as just a blessing and a gift to their congregation. And I spoke on stage on a Sunday morning service. They have 900,000 active members of the church.
Holy cow.
They have over 270 campuses. And so I spoke at their main campus. It was a phenomenal experience and talked about the beauty of fatherhood and why we do what we do and how our value for family influences our business and how it's an honor and a privilege to be able to partner with the great people of South Korea. South Korea has the lowest birth rate in the entire world. So you might think it's kind of interesting that you'd launch a baby care brand in the country with the lowest birth rate in the world. The reason we did it is we believe in a bright future for South Korea. While South Korea does have the lowest birth rate in the world, at 0.67 babies per woman, if you look at the Christian population of Korea, which is the fastest growing segment of the population in Korea, they're having babies north of 2.1 babies per woman. So South Korea is rapidly actually becoming a Christian nation. And our goal in launching there was to be able to equip this growing segment of the population with great products that can serve their household, paired with a beautiful message and a call to action to be able to celebrate family in what is one of the coolest countries on the planet.
Wow.
And so Yoido was gracious to invite us in. They were gracious to partner with us. And it was an amazing event. Even the Prime Minister of South Korea came to this diaper drive day that we conducted at the church. And it was a story I'll never forget. It was a wild experience on our launch weekend. And we're going to do it many other times. 3 of the 10 largest churches in the world are actually in South Korea.
Wow.
And so as you're praying, pray for that nation. God's doing incredible work there. And it's an honor for us to be able to be a part of it.
Michael, I've really enjoyed our conversation, man. I appreciate your vulnerability. You've been really inspiring. I'm proud of you as a brother. I'm proud of you for the work you're doing. I'm proud of the work to both accomplish things for the kingdom of God and also the work just in your own soul to understand what the Lord's doing in you personally and in your family. So good job, man. And I'm really, really grateful to have got to know you and spend some time with you today, man. This has been fun. Thank you.
Oh, it's awesome. Pleasure's all mine. Thanks for having me.